Charitable causes.
Yeah. All right. All right. Please come to order for the September 20th Ascension Parish Council meeting. Please stand for the opening prayer. Be led by Councilman Randy Cluott, followed by the pledge.
In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Dear Lord, we thank you for this day. Lord, we ask that you continue through the rest of this hurricane season to please have your hand on the shoulder of the folks in the Gulf South region and Ascension Parish. And Lord, with heavy hearts that we look out to those that were hit on the East Coast. May we help them all we can as we have endured that fate many, many times. Lord, last but not least, we ask that you continue to look over all the people that protect us in the military, law enforcement, and emergencies. We ask that in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so it looks like we have Councilman Joseph and Councilman Turner not present this time.
Lambert.
And
Oh,
Lambert.
Todd Lambert.
The good Lambert. Oh,
Yeah,
excuse me.
he's on vacation, I know. There is one chair addition tonight, and for those of you up here, we have a copy of it. Suzanne Hamilton has a request to add to the agenda approval of contract name change from Marcella Spazuzza to Donna Barnes for 2018 contract for professional services for a substance abuse counselor. They had a motion down there. Who was it? A motion by Councilman Johnson, second by Councilwoman Casso. Any opposition to that? Takes unanimous consent. Hearing none, that will be added as item 8A, general business. Okay, public sign-in period. If you'd like to make a comment on an agenda item, please come to the podium and pick up a card, red or a green card, and then bring that back and turn that into the council secretary, Mrs. McKee, and you'll have 3 minutes. Presentations, Mr. Matassa.
Call up the Oche and Amade. Morning, Luket, for a fantastic season they have. I know a lot of them are not here, but you got to see if this is. Okay. You can just call them up and we'll. You had that many here. So whoever's here can come. Any other? I'm gonna. Well, you can read all of their names.
Well, if you wanted to say something as well about your season.
Sure.
This is Chad Kennedy, if you pull his out.
Kennedy?
Yeah.
Coach, you want to say a few words?
Yeah, I did. Gentlemen, I wanted to thank you for inviting us today. What a great honor it is to be here. What a fabulous summer we had, you know. As we prepared for the season and we got ready, you know, everyone's dream is always to play in the World Series. And you always go into every season thinking that's where you're going to be. But in the back of your mind, you're truly wondering if that's going to occur. And these guys took not only me and my staff, but their parents and everyone for the greatest ride of the summer. They were fabulous kids, and the reason there's so few of them here tonight is we have 5 that are still in high school, and of course they're still playing sports, you know, football and all, and then the rest of them, 13 of them, are off playing college baseball. So we're kind of spread out. When they asked me to come, I said, well, it'd be hard to get the kids there because can you come back from Natchitoches? Can you come back from Alexandria? You know, and obviously the answer to that was their coaches weren't letting them leave in the middle of the week. But we just want to thank you once again. But we also want to thank the parents for supporting us and what a great job they did with these kids. They raised some great young men, and they were able to give us the kind of kids that we needed to have to learn how to compete. It was one of the fun parts of this was as we were playing, we were hearing all the things going on in the community and all that was going on at home and all the little viewing parties and people going in the restaurants having our game on and I know that we talked about it up there and how much fun everyone was having back here. So we appreciate that. This is a great place to coach. I knew that from being an opponent before, as I coached at Destrehan High School and got beat by them many times. In the state championship game in '03, we won't talk about that very often. But just some other people to thank. Jody Amity, Andre Goche were great for us. The high school coaches, Chris Scheck-Snyder at Dutchtown, Cade Cowan at EA, Troy Tomplay at St. Amant, Todd Landry at Ascension Catholic, and Conrad Gale. They did such a great job of making good young human beings, and the kids they gave us were fabulous. And we didn't, we're with them 5-6 weeks in the summertime. Those guys spend a lot of time with them, so they deserve a lot of the credit for what occurred in the summertime. I'm fortunate that I have Chad with me, but I also have Coach Donnie Diodne with me, who is on my staff at Destrehan. Matter of fact, I was fortunate enough to have this group I got to coach with my best friends. Bill Calhoun and his son Zach were with me also and just did a great job. And we just had so much fun with these guys. And it's a tribute to Ascension Parish and what you all are doing through the rec programs and through the high schools that make this special. So we just want to thank you for letting us come.
The certification of achievement is hereby awarded to Maury Luquette and the rest of the team and coaches. Goche and Amadei American Legion Post 81 baseball team. The Parish of Ascension proudly congratulates you on your outstanding 2018 winning season for making it all the way to the World Series semifinals, finishing third in the nation. Thank you very much.
I'd just like to just acknowledge the guys that aren't here and that put in their hard work. I know their parents. I know you all do this on TV. So Reed Babin and Jordan Badami, Austin Bankert, Reed Bouchereau, Braden Caskey, Carson Davity, William Dunn, Blaze Foote, Grant Griffin, Dwayne Geis, Harrison Hudson, Chad Kennedy, who is here, Leighton Lee, Jack Merrifield, Preston Thrash, and Zane Zephyr. I always tease him because he says I've been messing up his name for 2 years. Zane Zephyr. So he does a great job, and we're so excited for those guys as they get to go on and play college baseball.
Thank you. Coach, let's take a picture over here. Anybody wants to take a picture?
Still going?
Everybody else does. We'll just get behind them.
Yeah, right here.
It's almost good if Randy could come in a little. And I got Doc too. Okay, guys. Winning team. Winning smiles for a winning. Looks good. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I have one question. They called themselves the Wombats. Anybody know where that came from?
They have no idea.
Got me on that one.
Here's Reed. Okay. You gonna take nice, Coach?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Coach.
Councilman Turner.
Okay, now we have a proclamation for Ms. Fontenot and her family. Would y'all come up, please?
Thank you, Ken.
Whereas Gonzales area businessman Stephen Fontenot and his wife Cheryl Kernan Fontenot noticed that even through Gonzales was jambalaya capital of the world, there was no place in town where anyone could purchase a plate of jambalaya. So in August of 1993, there was founded the Jambalaya Shop in a former drive-in hamburger stand on Airline Highway in Gonzales. And whereas the Jambalaya Shop was an immediate success, and I gotta say, with a lot of hard work, as soon as the entire family, including their 5 sons, became involved in the operation, and whereas their popularity grew, so did the menu, eventually adding more dishes, including gumbo, shrimp stew, and spaghetti, and much more. They also offered menu items by the bucket, and they provided catering. And whereas the Jambalaya Shop has expanded to 12 stores in Baton Rouge area and Lafayette regions, and we just talked about one going up in Thibodeau, to make franchise available. Now, therefore, I, Kenny Matassa, President of Parish of Ascension, State of Louisiana, by virtue of authority vested in me, do hereby proclaim August 25th, 2018 as Jambalaya Shop Day in Ascension Parish and congratulate on a quarter century in business. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, President Kenny Matassa, Councilman and Councilwoman. It's an honor to be here. 25 years ago, the economy in Louisiana went south, and we had to find a new career. We were finance people, not cooks. Anyway, in America, capitalism is why America works. Because when a young family with 5 little boys can get the idea to start a business, and in 2 weeks' time, we were open for business. 2 weeks from the day we signed the lease. That's unheard of today. We have stores going up right now. Some will be up and running in the next 6 to 8 weeks. One of them, as he said, was in Thibodeau, which is his nephew, James Matassa. And we're proud to have James aboard. That will be James' the second one. He has one in Houma. We also have another one coming up in Prairieville, so Ascension Parish is getting a new one, and that will belong to Andy Fontenot, who also has the one in Gonzales on Airline, and he has the smokehouse, which provides all the sausage for the businesses. Anyway, the newest one that's coming on board will be in Pearland, Texas, Pearland, Texas. And sometimes within February of next year, the build-out will start. So we're looking forward for that. We want to thank Ascension Parish residents for making us a success. It's a pleasure to feed the people. And I only wish I could be in North Carolina right now. I know that they would need the food, and if I could be there, I would. But anyway, thank you again. This is an awesome honor to be here, and it is very much appreciated by our family. Thank you again. Martin, I forgot to say thank you, but you're the one that got all this together, so thank you so much.
Well,
Yeah, you did all the work.
well, I mean, we've known each other a long time, and I was there at the beginning when y'all were there, you know.
We're trying to convince your friend one in Texas. Your friend.
Oh,
He's retired.
All right, I'm gonna need 2 rows of people, please. Jambalaya people, if y'all could step forward. All right, Councilman Turner, if you could come in just a little. I got you now. All right. Yeah, that looks good. Everybody looks well fed in this picture. Excellent. Thank you and congratulations. And Cheryl, welcome home.
Yes.
When was the last time I seen you?
We want to recognize the guy that's not here tonight, Stephen Putnam.
Yes. Thank you.
Great athlete out of Santa Monica High School.
Okay, Parish President's report.
Okay, if it's all right with y'all, for informational purposes, Councilman Garrett Graves will join us. We don't know exactly what time, but if, Mr. Chairman, if y'all could give him a few minutes when he does come in. He has a real busy schedule.
Anybody have any objections? Hearing none. Okay.
Good.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, and I have Joan to come up to talk
Okay.
about some parish meetings.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Chairman, members of the council, I'd like to just make a brief announcement about the master plan open house that we're having next week. We're going to be having 2 sessions. One's Wednesday, September 26th at the Gonzales Civic Center, 219 South Irma Boulevard. The second is going to be Thursday, September 27th at Lowry Elementary School in Donaldsonville. And we'd like to invite everybody in the parish to attend these. I have some flyers. I'm going to leave them up here. The open house begins at 5:30 p.m. and it ends at 8. Both at 6 and at 7 p.m. we're going to have a brief presentation, but for the most part we're just going to have some poster boards around so that you can look at this. So we invite every one of you to attend and everybody out in the public to attend. Thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. President, do you have anything else? What about the Balloon Festival? We're going to make an announcement on that.
Yes, sir. Everyone is invited to the Balloon Festival. Pray for some dry weather. And it's going to be Friday and Saturday. Miss Jill Cluart has done a tremendous job with her whole crew, all the Lamar Dixon crew, working hard to put this together to be our best one ever. We have some new balloons coming and a few other new things at the festival. So everyone is invited. Everybody knows we got the new road. Hopefully the locals use the back road, which is through the community college from 44. We're also going to have parking at the college with some transit buses shuttling back and forth. So appreciate if everyone comes out and has a great time. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Cluart.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if you could allow me about 30 seconds, I just want to bring in for the rest of the council that Councilman John Cagnolotti and I went to the Region 6, Louisiana Police Jury Association region meeting on September the 12th, an A-meet. It was a great occasion. We've talked about the legislature and the way we went this last year and what the plans are for the future. And Sonny will be sending out some updates from that meeting. But it was a good meeting, and looks like the Police Jury Association is on board. Everybody's 100% into what's going on with the National Flood Insurance, and everything that's coming forward is one of the main topics there.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman. All right, the consent agenda, Ms. McKee.
Approval of industrial tax exemption program, Sugarfield Spirits. Renewal of master contract for professional services, topographic and boundary survey and services between Ascension Parish Government and T. Baker Smith, total budget $150,000. T. Baker Smith to receive a portion of this amount depending on the task order awarded and performed. renewal of master contract for professional services, topographic and boundary surveying services between Ascension Parish Government and Quality Engineering and Surveying LLC. Total budget $150,000. Quality Engineering to receive a portion of this amount dependent on the task order awarded and performed. Renewal of master contract for professional services, topographic and boundary surveying services between Ascension Parish Government and Earls and Associates LLC. Total budget $150,000. Earls and Associates LLC to receive a portion of this amount dependent on the task order awarded and performed. Renewal of master contract for professional services, topographic and boundary surveying services between Ascension Parish Government and Bryant Hammett and Associates. Total budget $150,000. Bryant Hammett and Associates to receive a portion of this amount dependent on the task order awarded and performed. Renewal of master contract for professional services, topographic and boundary surveying services between Ascension Parish Government and BFM Corporation LLC. Total budget $150,000. BFM Corporation to receive a portion of this amount depending on the task order awarded and performed. Amendment number 4 to master contract for professional services for architectural engineering services for flood recovery projects. Mujo Architecture LLC, increase of $125,000 for design work of a repair, replacement of station number 61 as a result of the August 2016 flood, not to exceed $336,455.41. Bid item, crack seal material, Covington Sales and Service, Inc., 72 cents per pound. Request for proposals, disaster debris monitoring, natural disaster Thompson Consulting Services, emergency debris removal, natural disaster DRC emergency services. Roads for acceptance into the parish maintenance system, Pelican Point, 13th Filing, Part 3, Phase 4, Part 2, Courtyard Drive pending repair, 617 feet. Green Tree Avenue, 1,205 feet. Amen Court, 400 feet. Ironwood Estate Subdivision, Ironwood Avenue, 1,222.25 feet. Ledgestone Avenue, 1,118.15 feet. Waycross Avenue, 1,312.50 feet. Herringbone Drive, 780.37 feet. Flagstone Avenue, 381.88 feet. Copperwood Avenue, 382.08 feet. New River Oaks Subdivision, Oak Run Drive, 1,360 feet. Meter Lane, 322 feet. A resolution to limit vehicle weight on Seabro Road. Change order MC01, 2018 asphalt overlay R.J. Daigle & Sons to add $149,490.32 to the master contract. Proposed ordinance to revise and install street signs and traffic control devices in a safe, clear, and concise manner which aids drivers of the parish. Proposed ordinance to amend Chapter 10 franchises to add Section 10-27 Point Capilla Electric, granting and assisting a non-exclusive franchise to PC Electric for the distribution, delivery, sale, and/or supply of electricity and/or electric energy and/or electric service to any and all residential, commercial, and/or industrial consumer. Proposed ordinance to amend the Ascension Parish Code of Ordinances article, it's supposed to be Article 6, it says 4 on the agenda, it's a typo. Council Procedures, Section 2-91 through 2-120.
Okay, so I have a request to remove item N as in Nancy and item O as in Oscar. Any request to remove any other items? Mr. Satterley?
J.
J, item J. Any other? Okay, so we'll take them up in the order. So first we'll go to item J.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I ask the secretary if she have any cards for speakers or anything.
Speaker cards?
No?
No.
Okay. No speaker.
Okay. So roads, item J, roads for acceptance into the parish maintenance system, Transportation Committee recommendation. Mr. Sadley.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, as I did last time, I'm going to object to this for the reasons stated before, and they haven't changed. I do not believe we should be continuing to take roads into our maintenance system when we don't have the budget to do so, and we've been promised over and over again by the Transportation Committee and others that we're going to come up with a plan. Haven't seen that plan yet, so I'm hesitant to keep doing this. This is another mile and a quarter, whatever the amount of the footage is of more roads to bring in. So I'm going to object.
Okay. So what's the pleasure of the council?
Motion to approve the,
Got a motion by Councilwoman Casso, second by Councilman Cagnolati. Any discussion? I know we have opposition, so we turn the machines on. So the machines are open to cast your ballots. Oh, here I am. Okay, please close the machines. Motion passes 9-1. Move to item N as in Nancy. This is proposed ordinance to amend Chapter 10, franchises to add Section 10-27, Point Coupee Electric, granting and assisting a non-exclusive franchise to PC Electric for the distribution, delivery, sale, and/or supply of electricity or electric energy or electric services to any and all residential, commercial, or industrial consumers. Mr. Kluot.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, as chairman of the Utilities Committee, I'm going to ask the wishes of the council to defer this back to the Utilities Committee.
So we have a motion to refer back to Utilities Committee by Councilman Kluot, second by Councilwoman Casso. Any discussion? Any opposition? Hearing none, motion is passed. Item O, as in Oscar, proposed ordinance to amend the Ascension Parish Code of Ordinances, Article 6, Council Procedures, Section 2-91 through 2-120, Strategic Planning Committee recommendation.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Cagnolati.
I'd like to make a motion that we
Beard
table
Fogel.
this for further discussion.
Table or refer back to a committee?
I'd like to see it discussed among the full council members at a later date.
So you want to defer it to the next meeting?
Defer it to the next meeting.
Okay. So I have a motion by Councilman Cagnolati to defer this to the next council meeting.
Second.
A second by Councilman Johnson. Any discussion? So I'd like to have some discussion on this. This is, I'm not sure do we know what the problem with that is? Is there a specific problem with that? Because, we went through this fairly in detail and made these changes, and the changes really reflect the procedures that the council is currently using.
Specifically, it points to using a document or an article that defines good governance, which is highly complicated and complex, and there are a lot of variables there, and I just think it warrants further discussion.
So that's specifically where we're talking about the goal or the function of the committee. Is that correct? Okay. Mr. Lawler.
I'd just like to add, so that we're not limited later on if we go to discuss this, that when it talks about the standing committee's responsibilities, it's a very simple thing, but that we not be limited to these responsibilities. So I think it has to be rewritten to indicate that the responsibilities listed in this new ordinance are not exclusive.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion and a second to refer this back to the Strategic Planning Committee.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. To defer it. I'm sorry. Thank you. To defer it to the next council meeting. Any further discussion? Any opposition? Hearing none, motion carries. Okay, general business, item number 8, approval to accept the award for the fiscal year 2018 Emergency Management Performance Grant in the amount of $33,000.
You didn't act on the consent agenda.
I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm off tonight. So I'll entertain a motion to. Got a motion by Councilman Johnson, second by Councilwoman Casso. Any discussion? Any opposition? Thank you for helping me there. Item number 8, approval to accept award for the fiscal year 2018 Emergency Management Performance Grant in the amount of $33,073.43. Ms. Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of council. This is a grant that our OEP department gets yearly, and we'd like to have your approval.
second.
Got a motion by Councilman Johnson, second by Councilwoman Casso. Any discussion? Any opposition? Motion is passed. Sorry, Ms. Collins, but I inserted Suzanne here in between your two items. I
Gotcha.
didn't realize, didn't look at that close enough.
I was on a roll, too.
Yeah. I'll make you walk back up again.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be with you again tonight. What we're asking for is simply an existing contract with a substance abuse counselor who does our evening substance abuse groups. Our existing counselor.
Got a motion by Councilman Cluide, second by Councilman Lawler.
Thank you.
Discussion, questions, opposition? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Suzanne. Ms. Collins, you're back. Item number 9, approval to accept grant award for the amount of $59,826.29, of which 25% goes to law enforcement for fiscal year.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilwoman Casso, second by Councilman Cagnolati. Discussion, questions, opposition? Motion is passed. Item number 10, update on status of current and applied for grants. Ms. Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The chairman asked me to put together something on this new funding that the Congressman Graves had talked to, Paul Sawyer had talked to you earlier, about a month ago. So what I did is, with his help and the President Matassa, I went through and just in general, the funding that they had indicated was $1.3 billion. Those funds were already dedicated. And what it is Congress had some backlog, and they funded these projects, which was the Comeet River diversion, East Baton Rouge flood control, West Shore hurricane protection, Grand Isle protection, and coastal restoration flood protection. So those were actually had funds that were allocated, and what they're doing is trying to go back through and get some of these off the books and get them started. The second part of this was that there was the next point was about 1.5 million, and it was broken down by projects from the Corps of Engineers.
Is that million, ma'am?
Billion.
Billion.
Yeah, there you go.
I
That's
get my
hard to
M's
say.
and my B's
I want to make sure we got that
sometimes.
straight.
I'm reading a million on this sheet for just one. But the Corps has 286 million, and those projects are already on the books. Comeet Diversion has a Corps funding for 14 million. Of the Corps' 286 million, we have a small project for the wastewater that Mr. Daniel is working on with the Corps. And then Livingston has a USDA. But the one that we'll actually benefit from is the CDBG for the block grant for 1.2 billion. This one is coming from HUD. It has not been written and posted in the Federal Register for notice. So therefore, that's where all the requirements, agreements, anything, restrictions comes from. Once it's published, then the states will get their funding, and we will have some type of direction, basically, of how these funds are going to come down. It's going to be a statewide project, and it's going to deal with watersheds, dealing with to protect the areas that were flooded like in 2016 to reduce the risk for them. But it has to be done by a regional or a conceptual plan that's being put together. And it's should be coming out at the late November is what we're saying now. It could be later. But the funds will come to the state, and then they'll go to us. So this is going to be a little while down the pipe for us, and then we'll start working on some projects. You know, the FEMA money that we had, the $33 million, that project we were asked to kind of just give you a basic of what it was, and then where we stand on it. The first, we did 2 applications that totaled $33 million. The cost of them were way more than the $33 million, but we put it in the application so that if one part of it didn't get funded, we still had enough in there to cover it. Those are, we estimate $25 million for the Marvin Bro Pump Station, protection levee, elevations and upgrades. In that application, in the water, it's Marvin Bro Pump Station, the stop logs. We had a lot of discussion about the stop logs. The Marvin Bro West Levee, Marvin Bro North Levee, and the Law Ridge existing levee. Those were the 4 that were put into this project. It was estimated about 57 million. So whatever, once it goes through. The second one was the Conway Bayou Drainage Reservoir expansion. It was allocated for $8 million. The projects that were included in that was the Sorrento Pump Station upgrades, expanding the existing reservoir, upgrade of the levee ring, and upgrade of ditches A, B, and C. So that estimated cost was about $38 million. Where we are today is the applications were submitted in March of this year. They were submitted to GOSAP. They reviewed them for a couple of months. Then they both have been passed on to FEMA. We have no idea when we're going to get some type of response back. Once they start reviewing, then we'll start having requests for information, because these applications are pretty detailed and they'll have to have us come back and submit. So it could be 3 or 4 months of submitting information back and forth. Right now it's in FEMA's hands through GOSAP, and then it'll be coming to us. The other 2 grants that we came to you last month on was the 2 national grants, competitive. The one with pre-disaster was $235 million. Those are for some type of drainage projects. Those I'm working with the drainage department with Ron and Joey on that one. And then on the second one is the flood mitigation assistance for $160 million. And that's for elevation of homes. That it has a lower threshold for the percent. Normal FEMA's is 75-25. And in this competitive one, sometimes you can get them at a 90-10, and maybe 1 or 2 might get 100%. We don't know till they do that, but that's where we're going to go back. We did apply for these last year. We were not selected, but we're going back again this year. We think we can make it a little better application. We found out a few things that maybe caused us not to get something. So those were the ones that we're working on right now, and in the monies that you were asking me to put something together on.
So I think, is that not correct? That covers all the grants that we have either applied for or potentially will apply for relative to mitigation of the 2016 flood. Is that a fair statement?
I guess it could be, yeah.
Okay.
This is new money, so there's still a lot of details that aren't
the 1.2 billion.
Yeah, so there could be something that comes up in between that we could utilize, but we're already working on the Muddy Creek. That's taken a good while to do, but Muddy Creek's coming, and we should be starting with I think Thad said if we get a little dry weather, we're okay to start on the excavation and the what they call it, rip-rap?
Rip-rap.
I'm getting it, rip-rap. That's what we're going to do. We're going to shore up those ditches there and reinforce them. So that's going to be do a lot of good for that. But we have other grants that we're doing. It's just that this one was more or less trying to fit you in, let you get an update on the new money, because I know the congressman's going to be coming to talk about it. So you'll have a good idea of what's going to be out there.
So I just received word he should be here within about 10 minutes.
Okay.
And so any questions for our silver medalist, Ms. Collins?
I don't know what you're
Mr.
talking
Kluwat.
about, Mr. Chairman. I'm not a gray-headed.
Yeah.
Silver.
Olympian.
Martha, on the
Yes, sir.
part you'd explained, we kind of know where we're going with all the Marvin Brook Pump Station. And
Yes, sir.
of course, the improvements to the Law Ridge Levee existing. But on the problems that we've had in the Sorrento Station and in the Conway area, we're looking good on that, those
Both
parts?
the applications were, we put everything we could get into those. We don't, you know, but FEMA, this is the hardest part for us when we go to put these packages together. It's related to damages.
Yeah.
We say that we have all these damages. Well, to do these applications, you gotta prove where those damages were and document them and have maps on them. And some of that is a little issue for us because they only go by what FEMA does. If you have flood insurance, you have claims. That's their data. But in the 16, there were a lot of people that were not in a flood zone and that flooded. So we're trying to see the best way to capture some of that and build a database on just the entire thing. Brian Martinez is we've kind of started funnel stuff to him to put a package to keep it all together. And then when we have these, it's going to be critical for us to document it and let the guys in the field and the managers know this is what's important for us to be able to go back and get additional money. And I know Rick's, when OBP's having some of the same issues. It's just it's a hard thing to capture when you're in the middle of it, some type of
I want to make sure that everybody understood that when you're dealing with FEMA, as we did when Katrina was years back, and then turn around and learn some stuff there, and then two big storms we had in the parish here, severed since then, and then we turn around with the 2016 flood. We had a little bit of the March flood, but that everybody needs to understand that the processes of the approvals and the information requested by FEMA and the way they request it is an evolution of things. There's no straightforward thing. As we did, and I know the Rick and them and the Recreation Department and also the parish president are fighting hard right now for some of the recreation areas we had some rebuild. And they're having to change directions at the advice of FEMA, change directions and apply in this direction and do this and do that. So it's just a long, hard struggle.
It changes daily, and what they ask us for, we do our best to provide it to them, because that's our goal, is to get this approved. Whatever it takes, we need to get it to them. And the staff has been, I can't say anything with drainage on those things. Ron and Joey have been tackling it pretty hard with us. Our Brian Martinez has taken that on with me to try and consolidate. And then the OEP is contributing. So it's not one thing. You'd be amazed at all the different facets of this stuff that goes into it. And but on on these projects, when Mr. Rue was here, he brought to the council, the Drainage Board, a list of priorities that he had put together for a 5-year plan. And on that, we had 2 of the projects that were approved. The other projects were not, but it was still to be looked at. So we do have a good list of what was that we had going. So I'm hoping that we can get Ron and Joey and to kind of tackle some of those, and let's keep them moving, because he had it pretty well laid out on the cost factors and these type of things. I don't get involved in those decisions, but we want to try and get a path forward. We get money and then we don't have a project. So these are some things that if we're going to get into it, we're going to spend a little more time in trying to prep, get these things approved. Let's work toward what it is. Some are going to take some additional engineering costs. Some of them it's going to take hydraulics, H&H studies, and I see that we're doing that in a lot of other areas. So it's whether we want, the priority is we pick the project and let's get it going. So, like I said, that one, I know that we've got some of those going. It's hard to pick a project just out the blue and start creating for a grant.
So we have in, so I had a couple of questions for you, Martha.
Mm-hmm.
The CDBG, normally that's an income-related grant, and from what I understand, though, that this time this is not the way we understand the 1.2 billion. Is that your appreciation of that?
It depends. You have CDBG, which is for low mod in areas that we deal with, sewer and these type of projects. The other one was when Gustav came and we had those 13 projects that was either met the national objective. There was some low mod in there. There was an economic impact in there. So they gave us 4 categories on Gustav, which is a little different than what the other was. So you could have maybe projects like the ones we did. We purchased the Lamar Dixon. Is that the congressman coming in?
It is.
Okay, well, I thank you very much, gentlemen.
It's a perfect timing, and
Yeah,
Congressman Graves, if you don't mind, we're ready for you.
They are. They just were quizzing me just to keep the time going. So.
So, Congressman, we just got an update from Martha on the grants and what requests that we've made, but we won. We appreciate the hard work that you've done to try to get some mitigation money for us here in Ascension Parish. And I know that some of us have listened to this before, but always learn something. Well, maybe if you could tell us a little bit of what Congress has done to try to help the victims of 2016.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I want to apologize for my dress. I promised I was wearing a suit earlier, but we have in the middle of a few events tonight, and I'm headed over to Lamar Dixon at CCA. Mr. Chairman, as you know, we for the flood victims, we've been able to get a total of $10 billion in federal funds for flood recovery here in this region from the 2016 floods. A few of the bigger portions include the public assistance program, which pays for public assets like roads and buildings and police stations and things like that. In addition, $1.7 billion of that funds the Restore Louisiana program. In fact, that program is entirely funded with federal dollars, but it is administered by the state of Louisiana. We also recently announced 5 different funding streams, federal funding streams, totaling about $3 billion in new flood protection money. And just to be clear, that isn't to get us back to where we were before the flood in terms of clearing out canals and ditches and bayous and things like that. This is truly getting us back, or getting us to a position we've never been in before, the best level of flood protection. Been able to take projects like the Comeet project that's been around for 32 years treading water, and been able to get full federal funding for that project to where it is going to be entirely built, helping to provide flood protection for Ascension, Livingston, and East Baton Rouge parishes. In addition to that, Mr. Chairman, We've been able to get a total of $1.4 billion through the Corps of Engineers, $300 million through FEMA, $32 million of which goes to Ascension Parish, $1.2 billion through the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. I want to say that again, $1.2 billion through the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Those funds are not allocated at this point. We are working with the federal agency to get the guidelines put in place. Those funds will be available to the state. The governor and I have been talking on a very regular basis about ensuring those funds being put in the right places. One of the things we've talked about, and I've said this in Livingston Parish as well, is looking at ways to take a fresh look at the Laurel Ridge Levee project and see what mitigation measures perhaps we could use to some of those $1.2 billion to complement those to where, look, we don't want to take Livingston floodwaters and put them on Ascension, and we don't want Ascension floodwaters on Livingston. I fully believe that with these investments, we can truly provide flood protection for everyone. This is the largest source of federal funds that this region has seen ever. Again, a total of $3 billion through 5 different federal agencies, so we're excited about that. As a matter of fact, one of the other pots includes about $63 million through the United States Department of Agriculture and Natural Resources Conservation Service. A portion of those funds are going to be used for some of the buyouts right here in this region, the Silverleaf community that has opted for or is working through the process for a buyout, which of course is a voluntary program. But addressing these repetitive flood loss communities. And then just pivoting, one last thing on flood, there's an issue called duplication of benefits that seems to be plaguing a number of our citizens. If they received approval for a loan through the SBA, didn't even have to accept the money, even the approval for the loan, they are currently being deemed ineligible for the Restore Louisiana program. Mr. Chairman, members of the council, I don't know about you, but I do not consider a grant and a loan to be duplicative of one another. You have to pay one of them back, the other one you don't. And I think it is a disservice. I think it is awful policy to consider those to be duplicative. We are in the final stages of trying to negotiate this bill with the Senate. We passed it through the House in December. We passed it through the House in April. And we are pushing really hard on the Senate to pass this bill. I think we're getting close. We were negotiating last night, negotiating today, so we're trying to get them to move on it. And then last thing to address is traffic issues, which I know is also something that's really important to this community. And while a whole bunch of people are out there taking credit for different things, I just want to say that when you follow where all these funds are coming from in terms of the work that's being done, we did negotiate a $500 million increase in transportation funds in the highway bill for the state of Louisiana. We helped create a new grant program, which Louisiana in 2016 received the 3rd largest grant in the nation, and a total of $100 million so far through that program. And we also just announced about 2 or 3 weeks ago about $80 million in reallocated federal funds from other states to Louisiana. And that is why right now you see construction on I-10 between Highland and 73, Highway 73. That is federal funds as a result of our negotiation. Some of the other work going on the Washington Street exit, working on the Picu Lane exit funded through the federal reallocation dollars. And so we're continuing to keep that on the front burner as well.
So I'd like for you, if you don't mind, to tell us the $1.7 billion from Restore. Could you give us a little update on how much of that's been distributed to the people that flooded?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, that's been a pretty frustrating situation. So I'm going to say it again. It's $1.7 billion. All of it is federal money, but it was given to the state for to administer. The state then hired a contractor. And Mr. Chairman, look, I'll tell you a few statistics, but I want to be clear on this. I think that the federal agency has some culpability. I think the state has some culpability. I think the contractors have some culpability. I think there's plenty of blame to go around, and quite frankly, I don't care whose fault is what. The bottom line is we have to improve performance, and I'll give you some statistics that sort of paint a picture. We got the first allocation of funds for Restore in October of 2016. In October of 2016, nearly 2 years ago, we got the first $423 million for that program. We got a tranche of $1.2 billion, additional $1.2 billion in December of 2016. So again, just shy of 2 years ago, and we got a third allocation around April of 2017. Nonetheless, Mr. Chairman, as of first week of March of 2018, so a year and a half after the first allocation of funds, $60 million out of $1.7 billion had actually been given to flood victims. $60 million out of $1.7 billion 18 months later. I'll say it again, Mr. Chairman. I'm not here to play the blame game. We are working in the solutions department. We've hosted several meetings with the Secretary, Secretary Ben Carson, Secretary of the agency. We brought the governor's staff in. We brought the Office of Community Development staff in and others trying to work through and find the choke points and help resolve those. The contractor, at that point when $60 million had been handed out, the contractor had been paid $75 million to give away $60 million. I'd like that contract.
Yeah.
As of about a month ago, and give me some wiggle room, I can give you the exact figures if you'd like, they were up to about $346 million. So again, approaching 2 years after the flood, approaching 2 years after the allocation of funds, they were around $346 million. I believe to this day, and Councilman Kluwat may be able to correct me, but I believe they're approaching $550 million today out of $1.7 billion.
Right at the 500 mark.
But we're having our constituents that are being re-victimized by our own government. And so we are working to prevent this from happening again and also trying to work to dislodge these dollars and get them out in the field where they belong in flood victims' hands. There's no excuse for people to be living in gutted homes, moldy homes, still in trailers and other things with $1.7 billion available to those flood victims. So
thank you. I appreciate, not good news, but I appreciate the update. I know we have several questions. Mr. Kluwat.
Yeah, Garrett, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
And one of the things about the restore money is that a lot of people have pushed back on the DC side, and I know it wasn't under your control. Got the money is about how the channels it went through, through HUD.
Yep.
You know, and because of some of the regulations, you know, this department holds their own regulations versus another department on how they disperse monies. So if you could just kind of, that was one of the big things. There was a lot of deliberation on that.
Yeah. Well, Councilman, a number of times. First of all, the state, when they submitted their spend plan to HUD, I was frustrated by the time frame that it took them to get that plan put together. They got initial approval in February of 2017. They got a subsequent approval in April of 2017. Things were done like doing a NEPA, an environmental analysis for every home for a time period.
Ridiculous.
Think about that for just a minute.
Ridiculous.
Doing an environmental analysis for every home. In some cases, doing lead and asbestos assessments for homes that were built after 2015. Just let that marinate for a minute. These aren't things that make sense financially. And so we've worked through with the contractor and others, and there are some improvements that are happening. But look, let's be honest with one another. We're going to have another disaster, and probably our own constituents once again. And whether it's us or it's North Carolina, this is re-victimizing our own people. And as you and I have discussed, the contractor in this case is going to end up getting compensated around $300 million to give away around $1.2 billion. $300 million to give away about $1.2 billion. I mean, raise your hand if you do it for $299 million. You know, so look, this isn't efficient. We need to get money in the flood victims' hands as quickly as we can, and as much of those monies as we can. And so there's some real lessons to be learned here. And we do have a bill moving through the Congress called the Disaster Reform and Recovery Act. I think everyone in this room would call it common sense. It is really revamping the way that FEMA prepares for, responds to, and recovers from disasters. A lot of lessons learned from right here in Louisiana. We were able to get in that bill, and we're once again pushing the Senate to move it, and we're making some progress there.
Okay, Councilman Lawler.
But I just want to clarify.
Okay.
Thank you on that. Good job pushing through twice already on the duplication of benefits.
Yes, sir.
That I'm asking my fellow council members, let's hit that Senate side and let's give them hell, because we need that support. We need them to talk the talk and walk the walk, because you guys have done it. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Councilman Lawler.
Congressman, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Do you foresee any federal funds coming our way in the near future, and I mean our way, the state of Louisiana, for interchanges on the interstate? We have serious problems such as Bluff Road and I-10.
Mm-hmm. my personal opinion is the state's had a prioritization problem for a long period of time, and we can all throw out our favorite pork project the state's done over the last few decades. The one that we've been trolling on a little bit lately is the Audubon Bridge up connecting St. Francisville and New Roads. While the project certainly has eliminated all congestion in those two cities, I think that if I had whatever the number was, $400 million or so, I don't think that's where I would have put it. So one issue is we've been working with the state, trying to get them to revisit their project prioritization process, and perhaps even working with Jamie Setz in the Capital Region, the MPO here, the Metropolitan Planning Organization here, which Ascension Parish has a seat on, just helping to develop regional priorities and stop the politicizing of projects. Next thing is the efficiency of the dollars we're spending now. Under the current Transportation Trust Fund that the state runs, I believe it's 11% of the funds are actually spent on new projects, or spent on, on construction projects, 11%. That's an awful lot of money to be eaten up on bureaucracy, on internal deliberations, and other non-project components. I'm answering the question slowly. I want to bring up one last point. The timed program that dates back to the late 1980s. That program set a new gas tax for every gallon of gas bought in the state of Louisiana. It's my understanding that program was supposed to last 25 years, which you can do the math, we would have been done. It's my understanding now that they are looking at extending the program probably to 2045 or so, and the number of projects that we have in the timed program is 0. So what's happening, Councilman, is that this region is a net loser on transportation dollars. We are sending our transportation dollars to other parts of the state whenever this region, hands down, has the worst traffic in the United States. We have, according to the last assessment, the 13th worst traffic in the nation. This isn't something that John Bell Edwards or Bobby Jindal or anyone else caused. This transcends many, many administrations. It's a lack of planning and a lack of investment, and I think politicized planning in some cases. 13th worst traffic in the United States. You have cities like Houston, Chicago, Dallas that have better traffic, more efficient traffic than we do in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, in this capital region. That's unacceptable. And so we've got to get our house in order. And I think that until we do that, it's going to be challenging for us to get significant new investment here, because I don't think there's the faith of many people that the dollar is going to be spent well. We have scrapped for, as I mentioned, the $500 million, which I say scrapped, you can't sneeze at $500 million, the $100 million in grant funds, and the $80 million in reallocated funds. So that's a total of $680 million that we've been able to bring to the table. There is a grant program that I mentioned where the parish, where the MPO could apply directly for those funds. And so I'd love to work with y'all if y'all have some priorities and see if we can work together and make you available of some of the, aware of some of the grant programs that are available that could play assistance in this role.
Thank you. And one last brief question. As far as the grants for the flood recovery and the flood issues that we're having, are there any grants out there that we could use to purchase private lands for detention ponds?
Yes. So there are two pots that come to mind right away. First is the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. That was the program that's through FEMA that I mentioned. That the parish has $32 million allocation under that program. That was a state decision to allocate $32 million here. The second is likely the $1.2 billion through FEMA that I mentioned. That the guidelines for that program have not been issued yet, and I've said this once. I want to say it again. We expect that we're going to have $1.2 billion without a single earmark allocation, what have you, to the state of Louisiana for flood protection. I've been talking to the governor about these funds for over a year as we've been working these through the process, and have really urged him to ensure that we use a merit-based system to allocate these funds where we're going to get the best bang for the buck, the best return on investment. And I think investing in some of these flood recovery areas is really important, because we want our constituents in Ascension, we want our constituents in Livingston, East Baton Rouge, some of the hardest hit areas, to have confidence that their flood insurance checks, their restore dollars they're putting back in their homes and businesses is going to be a good investment, and they're not going to be flooding again.
Thank you very much.
So you bet. There's a
Councilwoman-
chance the USDA funds,
Okay.
there's a chance those could be eligible as well, but the Natural Resources Conservation Service, but I do need to double check that, but that might be possible.
Councilwoman Castle.
Well, good evening, Gary.
Nice to see you.
Thank you, Congressman,
You
so
bet.
much. I had the same question that Aaron asked about the possibility of interstate interchange, just to get your answer, but I do want to take the opportunity to thank you for the widening, those funds for the widening of I-10. We just need to get it all the way through the parish.
We absolutely do. There's no doubt about it, and the whole connection between Baton Rouge and New Orleans. Look, let's, you can look at traffic models. We're going to continue to have increasing problems, and I think that we need to be looking not just at additional lanes on I-10, but even looking at options on 61, and figuring out what we can do to have that as a complementary road. When you look at some of the environmental conditions between Baton Rouge and New Orleans, we're going to have some really challenging engineering task ahead of us, as well as some environmental issues. And not to say at all we need to avoid, we should avoid it, but I do think that we need to be looking at complementary investments.
Thank you.
You bet.
Got Councilman Dempsey Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Congressman. I'm sure I'm glad that you mentioned parish to parish, the work that we're gonna have to do together, whether it be East Baton Rouge Parish, Livingston, and Iberville. We have some of these, Ament River, Bayou Manchac. We've done some decent agging, but we have never had any clear, really dredging.
Yes, sir.
We passed that. We need it now. Some of these, Bayou Manchac is in a scenic waterway.
Yes, sir.
We need this, we need to be able to get in there and dig this thing out. There's some spots in there you can walk across it. So I'm sure along all these projects you're gonna hear, and I know the funding's available, we're gonna need the green light, and we're gonna need you as a referee between these parishes to keep everybody in line. And plus, we need to work together.
Councilman, we do. We do need to work together, and I think with the resources available, again, the largest allocation of funds in this region's history, and thinking about, in addition to fully funding COMED and a lot of these other projects having $1.2 billion with no strings attached, effectively, no projects paired to it, we can do an awful lot of good work helping to improve the resilience of these communities with that money. In regard to the scenic designation, I think you're probably aware the legislature did go back and redesignate a few areas. While the scenic designations, I think, are important in some areas, I have gone myself into some of these rivers and bayous, and like you said, between the tree falls and just the sedimentation that has built up, it largely doesn't resemble a bayou or a river anymore.
Right.
And so we have got to carry out some measures to clean these up, and there's some efforts ongoing in Livingston Parish where they have I guess done a little bit less in regard to the cleanup. Like, they'll cut the trees and everything, but they'll leave some of them in the area, and some things that I think is a little bit more of a hybrid model, perhaps, that recognizes the scenic designation or intent, while still ensuring that this beautiful scenic area is not inundated along with the homes and everything else in it.
Right.
So,
Thank you so much.
yes, sir. Thank you.
Councilman Cagnolati.
Hey, Garrett, thank you for coming and talking to us. Appreciate the updates and the good news as well as the bad. You mentioned the time program. It's been in existence forever. What is the status, and who determines what that money's spent on? Because I've heard conflicting reports.
Yeah.
I've heard they're flush with funds, but
So, Councilman, back in the late 1980s, there was actually a list of projects that were agreed to and were embedded in that law. The projects, as you'll be shocked to learn, both went over budget and over schedule. And so that is why the financing agreement has had to be extended as long as it is. It's certainly the law could be changed, but it's my understanding that the reason they've had to extend the financing mechanism is because they didn't have enough money to even fund the projects that were in there initially. So adding new projects to it may be tough. But here's my 2 cents, and we represent 13 parishes in South Louisiana. I think that we paid our share. We have been more than generous paying for, since 1989. We've been paying nearly 30 years. And all these other regions of the state have benefited from it. We have the worst traffic in the state. This isn't my opinion. It's not your opinion. This is black and white data. We have the worst traffic in the state of Louisiana. We should not be a net loser of dollars. So my 2 cents is the areas of the state that have actually benefited from these projects, that they need to look at the financing mechanism for them to finish paying for them and cover these costs, and allow us to take our 4 cents or 6 cents that currently is being diverted to that program and put it to regional priorities. We have had meetings with your parish president as well as the adjacent 4 parish presidents, talking to them about a regional approach now. In fact, even back when the previous parish president was here, we met with him and met with some of the others as well, talking about how we need to be working together as a region, pretty tightly zipped because of how these other regions are coming in some cases taking advantage of the generosity and patience of our constituents.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, Congressman.
you
We
bet.
really appreciate it. I know that you're literally running from one place
No,
to another.
Thank you.
And also, we appreciate the work that you and your office has done with this council and with this parish in the past. You've been very receptive to us, and you've always been an asset for the parish. And we look forward to working with you in the future, especially on this $1.2 billion.
Yes, sir.
If Ascension only gets half, we'll still be happy.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to update and just remind you, look, please use this as a resource. Anytime we can be helpful to any of you, please let us know, and we're happy to do what we can to help advance Ascension Parish. We've got some great bills moving through the process right now and fundamentally changing the core. I mentioned the disaster. I know that Ascension Parish is now in the coastal zone. We just passed a bill out of committee on Thursday unanimously that increases the revenue sharing percentage from offshore energy up to 50%. And again, I know a portion of those funds under that program go directly to some of the parishes, and so we're continuing to work on solutions here that I think really benefit all of our community. So, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 11, approval to authorize the parish president to enter into a contract with Quality Engineering to perform a regional H&H study on the watershed on the property of the proposed courthouse, $35,200. Mr. Ken Dawson.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is, as you said, a request to enter into a contract to allow Quality Engineering to do this H&H study. It's my understanding that from the initial conversation that this is in addition to what's normally required for any type of drainage study, because they wanted to take this study further to look at any effects they have further downstream and even some of the issues upstream. The courthouse committee met yesterday and basically decided to move forward. The funding will be coming from the section of the overages that's being received, from that for the purpose of the courthouse. So it will be the overages fund, not the fund that actually is designated for the construction, and they approved that unanimously. So we want to move forward with it, and it's also, I think it's going to help the parish greatly. The city was also involved in some of these decisions. I think it would also be a good addition to looking at how that particular watershed drains, and we want to make sure that there's no issue with the courthouse with it.
Okay. So let me ask you I'm sorry, were you motion to approve? We got a motion by Councilwoman Cassos, have a second by Councilman Cagnolati. So I have one other question while we're in the discussion is, was this a recommendation of the architect?
It was a recommendation of the architect, and also, Mr. Jafisi was working for us, representing the parish, that this will be done so that we can make sure that long-term there are no issues downstream of upstream of the entire watershed, to make sure we take a good look at everything.
Okay. So I have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? Mr. Sadley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ken.
Yes, sir.
I guess I have a basic question or two here. Exactly, someone tell me, how did Quality get this job? What were their qualifications that were far and above other engineering firms that were considered? My question assumes that others were considered. I hope so. Number two, is not quality part of the civil design team for the courthouse? And if so, does anyone besides me view that as a potential significant conflict of interest? I also, Mr. Chairman, have some druthers about shouldn't this H&H study have been done actually before even buying the property? in applying, I'm not sure what's going to be applied here. I guess our existing DIS, Drainage Impact Study codes. We all know that HNTB has been contracted and paid to not only make those codes more stringent and meaningful, but as well as give us a floodplain management study. And it just seems to me that, that FMP and DIS recommendations coming from HNTB may, for example, show some things that once we do this study with quality or whoever gets this job, that may exempt the courthouse from the appropriate recommendations, which wouldn't be a wise thing. Now, I heard our Mr. Dawson just say that we want to be sure, and you bet, upstream or downstream, that because there's a couple hundred people who could suffer consequences of this thing if it's not done right. We have been told, for example, as the EA Drainage Commissioners, that a lot of fill is going to be brought in, Mr. Chairman, and that there'll be at least a need for probably second detention pond, albeit I'm sure the design team hasn't totally come up with all it might look at. I mean, who knows, though? Maybe we need to be building a bottom floor. We bought the property, it's $500,000 property. Hopefully it's suitable to put the courthouse up from a drainage standpoint. Maybe, though, that bottom floor might need to be open and useful for parking if we're really thinking about a whole lot of fill here and a second detention pond. Anyway, reviewing, I'd like to know how Quality got this job, who else was considered. If they're part of the design team, someone addressed my issue about conflict of interest. And I don't hesitate to add, Quality has been criticized, quite frankly, in the press and by the public for multiple things that infringe upon something I'm always interested in doing, building public trust. They're involved in lots of campaign donations to elected officials. We had the fish fry early in the last election cycle for all the public employees by Quality. It's no secret that the professional organization Lapels has cited that company and in one of its principal offices for fraud, deceit, forgery, 16 different violations. Mr. Chairman, I'm concerned. And as a result, unless I get some satisfactory answers tonight, while I'm all for doing something to be sure we do the right thing relative to drainage for the courthouse, I'm not quite sure Quality is the company to do that.
Okay, Mr. Dawson.
Thank you for listening.
Yes, sir. Probably Mr. Jafisi would be the best person to answer this, but I'm sure this was a discussion that was had with him along with the architect and probably even involved with the contractor that was pulled for the job to decide to do this. Quality Engineering, as Councilman Satterley said, was selected as part of the team that won this particular job. I would think that probably since Quality is already doing the initial studies and drainage studies, that because of the knowledge that they would gain through that process, it probably would be feasible for them to continue on since it would be the extension of the work that they're already doing. Having another person coming in and do it would probably require, some learning and some repeating of things that are already accomplished. So not to answer for Mr. Jafisi or those that were initially in the conversation, but I would think that was probably the direction. I can get more information if this is what this body wished me to do.
So let me ask this, was that the recommendation of the committee and the recommendation of the architect to use this firm?
Yes,
Is that
sir.
correct? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, further discussion, questions? Mr. Sadley?
Yeah, just a follow-up, if I haven't heard what Ken had to say. So the $35,200 that's being met tonight, shouldn't have this been part actually of the original civil contract for the design firm?
It's, Councilman Satterley, it's beyond what the initial requirement would be, from my understanding, that because they wanted to make sure that even in addition to what was required, they would normally have to submit, that they would go beyond those boundaries.
I understand that, but we have current law, which I'm not sure should be applied to this, or should be applied to anything for that matter, until we can finally get, HNTB's recommendations and the floodplain management plan, as well as the drainage impact study codes altered. It bothers me that I think we have too many carts in front of too many horses here in this process, and I have to borrow Miss Terry's comment. I can't get my arms around this. Seems to me clearly we need to get this done, because our chairman of EA Drainage indicated that was the reason why we thought we were going to have working meeting, you know, to take a look at the recommendations of HNTB, and we haven't had that either. Seems to me we ought to have all that first, have it defined. This is going to be our code going forward, and then design team as well as H&H team, if it's needed to be beyond design. Here are the new laws, make it work for that. Like I say, maybe we for example, would have to make the bottom floor open and puts in some parking lots. I don't know. I mean, I'm not an engineer, and I haven't seen what the results are going to be, but particularly today, I mean, I guess everybody saw WBRZ, was it just last night, where Marcy Oaks has a detention pond that's fallen over, and we got the parish saying it's not our responsibility, and of course the developers, that's been 7 or 8 years ago, I remember serving on that as a planning and zoning commissioner. They're saying we ain't got nothing to do with that. Well, that doesn't help the poor gentleman that was on TV last night whose backyard and fence is caving into that detention pond. I just think we're really rushing here to do this, and we should spend some time, and I just don't understand the process. I mean, Mr. DeFee's not here to answer how this company was chosen. What other companies were considered? Do we just pull this out of a hat? Can you give me another company? Why were their qualifications not as good or were less than? And I know, you know, this ain't $50,000 or more, but nonetheless, this council has changed that to $25,000, and Mr. Matassa himself has given it up to 0. So I appreciate we're being asked. But even at $35,000, that's 75% of 50, where you'd have to at least do RFPs and all that kind of stuff. RFQs anyway, and get different people involved in it. There's a real problem with a design team individual being also the H&H engineer.
Okay, further discussion, Mr. Matassa.
One discussion, please.
Mr. Lambert.
Mr. Sadley, again, you might be crossing district lines. I believe this is in Mr. Turner's or Mr. John's over that district. We're dealing with the courthouse here. I mean, we want to make sure that the school and the other surrounding people around here are not affected. I'm not holding up any meetings. We're trying to make sure that we get the best for all the surrounding school and people. So if this recommendation came from the courthouse committee, and is that what I'm hearing?
Correct.
I'm going to have to support the committee.
Mr. President.
This recommendation came because we were all worried about, nobody wanted EA or any surrounding areas to be flooded. So Grace and Hebert recommended we extend the drainage work. And it was a recommendation from him. Quality is a member of that team, and so that's why they recommended Quality. And the money's coming from the overage of the fees collected to build the courthouse. So unless y'all want to delay building the courthouse, I would hope y'all pass this. Thanks.
Mr. Sadley.
Yeah, I just heard from my colleague that I'm crossing district lines, quote unquote. I think that's a good thing. I think part of my job and part of all of our jobs is that we wear 2 hats. One for our district. In my case, that's a small hat, District 4, I realize that. And regardless of where this courthouse is being built, it's going to serve all the peoples of the parish. And of course, we wear a big hat for all of Ascension. And that's what I'm concerned about here tonight. I don't really believe I'm putting my nose in any way where it doesn't belong. I see a conflict of interest in having a company, and I can't be, be both on the design team and doing this H&H study. I mean, maybe they'll make recommendations and maybe they won't. But maybe the possibility of them being able to do that, maybe they'll make recommendations that aren't as stringent to get the whole thing approved and so forth, and then later on we'll have an eroded detention pond or an inadequate one or whatever. I don't know. But it just seems to me that there is that conflict there, and I do believe it is my right and responsibility to question this. And that's all I'm doing, Mr. Chairman.
Further discussion. Hearing none, I think we have opposition. Open the voting machines, please. Okay, please, okay. Cast your ballots. Mr. Cagnolotti. Okay. Please close the voting machines. Voting machines are closed. The motion passes 8-2. All right, we have item 12, planning and zoning recommendation. Zoning review IDPZ 1775.18, Louisiana Highway 42 and Louisiana Highway 431, located on the north side of LA Highway 42, approximately 600 feet west of LA Highway 431, to amend the Ascension Parish zoning from conservation to mixed-use corridors, MU. Zoning Commission recommends approval of this rezone. Got a motion by Councilman Dempsey Lambert, second by Councilman Kluot. Any discussion? Any opposition? Motion is adopted. Introduction of ordinances. An introduction of ordinance to declare surplus and authorize the transfer of certain assets and all rights, title, and interest in these assets to East Ascension High School's television program classroom. Mr. Parrington.
Yes, we have some surplus equipment and we can do a cooperative endeavor, and so this is what they do some work for us. They repair our computers, our laptops, and so we were just going to dedicate.
Motion.
Introduce.
Got a motion by Councilman Kluot to introduce the ordinance. The ordinance is introduced. The introduction of ordinance employee reinstatement procedure.
Motion introduced.
Got Councilman Lawler moves to introduce. That ordinance is introduced. Public hearing. Reading of ordinance item number 15 to acquire a parcel of immovable property for the Ascension Parish government for the expansion of the Department of Public Works facility located on Church Point Road. Mr. Parrington.
To acquire a parcel of immovable property for the Ascension Parish government for the price of $285,700 plus cost of closing for the expansion of the Department of Public Works facility located on Church Point Road. Whereas the Ascension Parish government desires to acquire certain immovable property, whereas there's a need in the public purpose for the acquisition of certain immovable property for the expansion of the Department of Public Works, whereas the Ascension Parish government is hereby desires to acquire the property, servitudes, rights of way, and authorize the office of parish president to do whatever is necessary to enter negotiations and acquire said property. Now therefore be it ordained the Ascension Parish governing authority authorizes the purchase of 9.9 acres, more or less, parcel of property, section 27.9.3, situated in the parish of Ascension, more fully described as Exhibit A, attached here to and made a part hereof. This ordinance is being adopted in conformity with section 601 of Ascension Parish Charter. Purchase of the property is subject to approval by the parish attorney and contingent upon the sale of being able to deliver virtual title. Said purchase to be funded one half by Ascension Parish, one half by East Ascension Consolidated Gravity and Drainage District. Kenny Matassa, the parish president, is hereby authorized to sign any and all necessary documents on behalf of the parish of the purchase of the property. This ordinance submitted to a vote. The vote thereon was as follows.
Public hearing.
Motion.
Got a motion by Councilman Kluot, second by Councilman Cagnolotti. Public hearing's open. No comments during the public hearing.
Motion to close.
Got a motion by Councilman Johnson, second by Councilman Cagnolotti. Close the public hearing. Opposition. Public hearing is closed. Ordinance item number 17.
Motion to move the ordinance.
I got a motion by Councilman Kluot, second by Councilman Cagnolotti. Discussion. Mr. Lawler.
Yeah, I have some concerns about this, and I expressed these earlier and other things. First of all, I just noticed that the appraisal cost $600, which I find extremely high for an appraisal based on what I've seen. But I'd like to see justification for purchasing this, because what I see, and I've been out there to the barn, I've driven through it, I've looked around. I think we could benefit from reconfiguring the property if we need to get better use out of it. I don't think that it's a wise move to spend $285,000 to purchase approximately 1 acre that has a house on it. And part of the consideration is the majority of that cost has to be due to the house. Because I know up in Prairieville, you can buy 1 acre for about $78,000. 80,000, maybe even a little bit less than that. I just think that why are we paying for a house right next door to that building, to the DPW area? I think number one, we have to reconfigure the area. we can do this to make it more efficient. Number two, currently the parish owns property all throughout the parish. It's East Ascension Drainage owns it due to repetitive loss. What I'd like to see is that we take some of the vehicles that are stored there, then when we have work that has to be done in another part of the parish, that we use these East Ascension Drainage pieces of property that we own, we can limestone some of these, put a fence around them, and use them as staging areas. We can't build a permanent structure on them, but we can use it as a parking area and a staging area, so we don't have our employees having to drive back and forth to the barn where they go back there because they have to get there early, so when they get off of work, they can go right home. Well, they're taking time that they could be working to drive back there. If we had staging areas throughout the parish, they could use these staging areas to work, I don't say longer hours, but to be more productive during their workday. But quite frankly, I've also looked, if we're intent on buying property because we need an expansion of property, I've looked all throughout the parish. There's lots of other pieces of property that are larger than this that we can purchase for significantly less. I mean, we're buying a house, and I don't see any reason to go buy a house. Yes, it's next door to DPW. Let's reconfigure it first for a lot lower cost. Use the East Ascension's repetitive loss land that we have if we need staging areas and we need more storage areas. This, to me, is not a wise use of our money. At $285,000, and that is a lot of money.
So, was that a question directed at Mr. Daniel, or did you have a question in there?
Well, I'd like to get some explanation as to why we're doing this, because I haven't received any.
Mr. Daniel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. I have a map here, but I'm not sure how to put it up. If
John will help you with that.
Somebody would.
There it is. There you go.
Okay. So 42-119 and 42-123, right here. This is the area that we're talking about purchasing. First of all, why do you want to buy it? Well, property next to the DPW lot doesn't come up for sale all that often, so this is a great opportunity to acquire a piece of property that's adjacent to our lot. It's good to acquire property like this for the same reason that the major plants acquire property around their facilities. It's to keep from causing a nuisance to your neighbors.
Won't that cause a nuisance to the people that are right next to them then?
Well, it could. It depends upon the use of our property. If you see these two areas right here, those are going to be the fuel station, Councilman. And we're going to have trucks going in and out of there all day long fueling. And so buying that piece of property there will give us a buffer to that next house over with the dust and the noise for your neighbors. Secondly, you did talk about reconfiguring. You can see there is a canal running through the Ascension Department of Public Works. When it rains, that property floods, so some of it is not usable. We would be able to use that additional area for storage. It would also maybe give us the opportunity to reconfigure the fuel station a little bit so that we could drive cars in and out. They wouldn't have to kind of make the sharp turns that they're making now. And finally, last council meeting, we passed a contract to do additional culverts in the parish. We were planning on maybe using that as a laydown yard as well. Now, I appreciate your suggestion for having staging areas in other parts of the parish. I think that's an excellent suggestion. We do that in some cases already. We could expand more. It makes a lot of sense just to be able to leave your equipment there and then come back the next day and do it. So I think that's a good idea, but I also think that purchasing this property is a good idea. There is a house on it. It's on piers. It could be moved off and used somewhere else as well. Perhaps we could sell it, or I'm not sure how much money you get for selling houses like that, if any. But it's an opportunity to buy a piece of property next to the Department of Public Works. It's got some options for us to be able to use it, and it does keep us from being a nuisance to our neighbor with the noise and the dirt and the dust, and I think just would enhance the operations at the department.
Okay, Councilman Kluot.
Yeah. As I made the motion on this, basically, and I knew we was gonna have some discussion, but, I agree that it's got a house on it we don't need. So, yeah, I don't know how much negotiations that we can do with the landowner, but, you know, sell the house and then we take the land. But, looking at the map, this is a good opportunity for us to square up. We're on two sides of this property already, okay? And then we got a Parish Road in front of us, and we'll, you know, it'll be I think it's a good opportunity. This place has evolved, all right? You know, it's just been added on, one shed, one building after another. So we square this property up, and this will be a good time to try to reorganize it. I had no idea that this piece of land would cost this much, but it cost this much with a house on it.
The appraisal.
And the last piece of land we bought there, the lot right next to it had a house on it also that we used a little bit for the IT and then kind of done away with it. So I don't have a problem purchasing it and find some exit plan for that house.
Councilman Satterley.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Daniel. I agree with Councilman Lawler. This is buying a house, not buying a 9/10 of an acre lot. And clearly, when you look at the appraisals, similar aged, similar sized properties with developments, a house on 3 or 4 different lots that are in that appraisal. That's the reason why it comes out to $287.5K.
It's the actual appraisal, Councilman, is $257.
Okay, but we pay in $287.5. Are we proposing?
Councilman, I can tell you how we got there, Mr. Sadler.
Well, I'm really not. That's just something he brought up. I'm really not interested in that.
Because
Yes,
in my opinion, the offer was 10% over the appraised value.
Okay, so but we're proposing to pay $287.5.
Correct.
Thank you. Gentlemen, this house is going to be torn down, and then we're going to have to pay not only for that demolition to remove the debris. We're not going to move this house. Mr. Daniel, you said you're not sure how much money's involved, but it could be moved and sold. Okay, shouldn't we net it ahead of time, right now? Tell me how much. Because I just can't, again, there's another one I can't get my arms around. We could locate elsewhere, you've admitted that. I understand, as Mr. Kluot discussed with you, that it's close to where we are. I'd even question, though, is our plan to stay where we are with DPW right now, indefinite? We could purchase elsewhere at a much, much cheaper price. And I think we probably should look into doing that before we, quote, rush to judgment and buy this one. Or, I did hear a comment about, is there any way to negotiate with this homeowner?
We negotiated for a quite lengthy period, Councilman.
Okay, well, again, I think paying $300,000 for a developed property where you're going to wind up tearing down the development and paying to do that, as well as to remove the debris, is going to run that price well over $300,000, and I think we could build elsewhere a lot cheaper. That's my feeling. Thank you for listening.
Appreciate your opinion, sir.
Councilwoman Casso.
To quote Doc quoting me, I can't quite wrap my arms around it either, frankly. I do appreciate the further explanation. I think it's important that we see those maps, that we understand why you feel, in your educated opinion, that this is a good purchase, why other members of this council might feel the same way. But look, if I owned that house, I'd be ecstatic, because it is noise, dust, and dirt that devalues that property. And so I am very concerned about paying that kind of money without a house, eventually, for a piece of property that I don't, frankly, although I'm not an appraiser, but I do buy property from time to time, I seriously doubt that it is actually that valuable.
Ms. Casso, may I respond to
you? You may certainly. I welcome that.
Okay. So I've run into this situation before in Public Works. The house was there predating the department's Public Works facility. And I don't think it's fair to the homeowner that we put a facility there and then we say, well, now your house is devalued. Right.
I realize that.
I have a problem with that. So I can understand paying a lot, why you might have consternation paying the appraised value for the piece of property, but to say that it's worth less because we have devalued it, I don't think that's a fair way to look at this.
I appreciate that, but that's the reality of it. So I am concerned about the price.
If I'm sounding argumentative, just stop me.
No, look, you're welcome to argue with me. People do it all
Well,
the time.
I'm just saying that I've bought properties before under these kind of conditions, and federal law usually doesn't allow you to allow a public entity to devalue a piece of property because there's a facility next to it. So you pay the appraised value, but I understand that everybody's got to make a decision on it, and I'm just giving you the facts. As Councilman Kluat says, it allows us to square up the property. It's more footage on Church Point Road. It gives us some more options, and you don't really have a chance to buy it that often, and it can really negate a negative nuisance for both the parish and the homeowner. So, kind of restating the obvious.
I appreciate that very much. I still have a problem with how much it's going to cost. But we're going to all vote. we all get to have an opinion.
Okay, Mr. Lawler.
Yeah, I would like to get an explanation as to why we're paying more than $250,000. I agree. The parish, nor should any government entity use their facilities to devalue somebody's property. But we're not devaluing it. We're going to pay, with taxpayer money, 10% more.
It's the relocation of the home from the home. I've done the research, and you can pay up to 20% relocation cost.
Well, it's my understanding that these people didn't want to sell initially, that we talked them into it.
I don't think that it was that we talked them into it. I think that the initial offer that we made was too low. They wanted to sell, but the initial offer that we made was too low. And I was not involved in the negotiation, so
Well, I will certainly sell my house if people want to come in and give me 10% more. I mean, most people would do that.
Well, I'm not sure, I don't know that I've sold some property myself, and I haven't always agreed that the appraised value was the true value, so.
I just have a hard paying 10% more than the appraised value. It's not my money. I mean, it is my money, actually. It's
all of our
everybody's money. But I know personally, I wouldn't, if I'm buying a house for myself, I don't want to go pay 10% more than what the appraised value is. I don't think it's needed at this time. I don't think it's wise to do it at this time for numerous reasons. I really wish we would hold up on this.
Councilman Kluat.
Yeah, once again, I was surprised by the appraised price, okay? But then I was surprised how much they told me my house was worth per square foot before the flood. I'd have sold it 20 years ago, you know what I mean? But, so that's just how out of touch I am with those appraisals and those values. But, we talk about we don't need this or whatever. This is an opportunity. I don't see DPW moving anywhere, okay? And I see some improvements there. We talked about DPW moving before. And we're not moving unless we just pick up everything and move it. So this is an opportunity. We bought parcels of land before, right there. This is an opportunity to pick up another parcel of land, square it up, get us some more frontage on the road, and try to make some kind of, hopefully within the management of the administration and different department heads, take a look at this opportunity and clear up some of the congestion at that place. The thing of paying them, we have people that disagree with the appraised value. I can't argue that one way or the other. If you disagree with paying 10% over, we've got the legal autonomy to do it.
Correct.
Okay? But the fact is, does it have an added value for us? All right? I think it does. And I like I said, once again, I pass by there every day, and I had no idea that it even valued it, that piece. So, but that's what it is. And I don't know how much an appraisal costs either. So I'm all right with the $600. That's the least thing we're talking about tonight.
Further discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Lambert.
And that's many years, and DPW is not gonna move. I don't think anyone else would want to take on the noise in their district. It's in the center of the parish. I agree, it's high, but this is the only way we're gonna expand out, and get the equipment in there, but, I mean, and we looked just, it was back in 2004, 2005. It's just, this is where DPW is gonna be located, Church Point Road. Everyone knows to go there. All our recycling, everything is there. I think this is what we need to stay.
Okay. Mr. Satterley.
Yeah, I just would like to interject, and please, gentlemen and lady, before everybody jumps on me for this comment, I fully realize that appraised value does not have an equal sign with assessed value. That said, this property is assessed, according to Mr. Smiley's rules, around $90,000, about a third for what we're going to pay for it with the 10% premium. Again, this is a 40, whatever it is, some odd year old home that's going to be torn down. Probably going to have to pay for that. We're going to have to pay to remove the debris, et cetera. I really doubt, unless someone tonight can give me numbers showing that we're going to actually move it. I mean, if we talk to Davy Shoring or whatever, and I've got some experience with that, by the way, and I can tell you right now, it's a lost leader. It's $90,000. Thank you for listening.
Further discussion. So, Madam Secretary, open the machines. So we got, what are you going to vote? Benny Johnson. Okay, close the machines, please. Oh. So we have 5 yes and 5 no. The ordinance fails. Item number 18.
Motion adjourned.
Got a second. Any opposition?